these three marquee investigations that were really carrying a lot of weight for thousands and thousands of people across America, right? This case in Pennsylvania and Dimmick, the case in Texas, and the case in Wyoming, where EPA actually came in and got involved in the case. You see what happens in the investigations that unravel and Dimmick, not unravel, literally get clamped down on. And you see what happens in Texas. Now, I still have never received an adequate answer from anyone at EPA about what happened to those investigations. The citizens were simply left out in the lurch. The science was put aside. In Wyoming, the one case where you had results come through, and, you know, this was, you know, like huge news, because the first time EPA is saying, yes, this is fracking fluids in the water. So guess what happens? After the film is out, actually it was the same day as I was at Soldiers and Sailors. I was backstage, and I got a phone call from Bloomberg News that said, oh, have you seen what happened in Pavilion? Or a text message from a reporter. Oh, is this what you're talking about in Gasland II? The EPA and the Obama administration handed over the case in Pavilion to the state of Wyoming, which was hostile from the get-go to the EPA and their own citizens, and decided that they were going to continue that investigation, conduct that investigation as the state of Wyoming, with a $1.5 million contribution from Encana, the drilling company that was being investigated. And so I called up John. I said, you know, John Fenton has had, and his family, have had a lot of health problems over the summer. I said, you know, and he said, I feel, you know, because he came on a couple of the tour dates with me in Colorado and in New York and Pennsylvania. And he said, you know, I feel so much better when I'm away from home. There's a workover rig out behind my house, and they're spewing off methane, and they're doing all this stuff. And then I found out later from one of the scientists at NOAA that they were re-cementing all the wells. That Encana was going in and trying to, like, fix everything, as if that would somehow hit the history eraser button, and we could just magically say that everything is hunky-dory. You know, when you've got 15 times the level of benzene in the groundwater that's legal. So we've seen nothing more but the same. Gina McCarthy, the new head of the EPA, has not said a peep about fracking. What we do know is that the Obama administration, in the same month as this film came out on HBO and was seen by 3 million people, came out with a climate change plan. Big, you know, speech on global warming and how it was, you know, the biggest obstacle and problem facing our future generations. And he's right about that. And it was kind of welcome to hear this kind of language from an American president. At the same time, what he did was he facilitated a transition in our power structure from coal to gas by creating standards for CO2 emissions that coal-fired power plants couldn't survive, but the natural gas-fired power plants didn't have to actually do any modifications to meet the standard. And what that means is you've got less CO2 from natural gas, but you're totally discounting all this methane that's leaking all over the place. So it doesn't really do anything from our global emissions perspective, which is what we have to encounter for to deal with climate change. So what we've seen is more of the same: double speak, double think, double talk, and it's very clear that this is influence, direct influence on the policymakers of people who are spewing half-truths and things that are not clear in the science. As Doug said, you know, they're totally dismissing and minimizing the citizenship and the democratic rights in this process. And the other thing, so what happens is, you know, there's a you can't incrementalize your approach to this industry. You can't do it. It's not going to help. I mean, I've interviewed people drilling wells in Washington County, Pennsylvania, who said, we got regulations on the books right now in PA that would help, but nobody follows them. I mean, you've got to look at enforcement. I was on a panel with Governor Bill Richardson from New Mexico in London, England. The Financial Times World Energy Shale Gas Revolution Forum or something. And I was there, and it was a room just like this, except everybody was in the gas industry. I mean, I hope you're not all. But they were all, you know, they had three-piece suits and cufflinks and the whole nine, and everything was And I'm there with Bill Richardson. Bill Richardson said, oh, well, we can fix this. And I said, Bill Richardson, you know, you have 50,000 gas wells in your state when you were governor, and you had 14 inspectors. And he had no answer for that. So when you're talking about this industry, they're going to break the law. They're breaking the law all over the place. They're going to get exempt from the laws that they don't break. So the answer is Doug Shields' answer, which is spread quickly all around the world, which is ban it. Ban it and move on. You can't build 50 years of infrastructure for electricity, power generation, and natural gas. It means Pennsylvania's going to get fracked, West Virginia's going to get fracked, Ohio's going to get fracked, everybody's going to get fracked. And that's bad for communities, it's bad for water, it's bad for public health. But it also means you've tied yourself into a system that's cooking the planet. And, you know, when you're working for energy in depth, what you're doing is you're working for businesses whose business model is to wreck the planet Earth and bulldoze communities. So the bottom line here is, you know, this system under the president has failed. And I've said it over and over and over again on television, every station I can imagine to get on. And I've gotten on them all. You know, meet with the families in this film. Meet with Professor Tony Ingraffia and Bob Howard, the scientists and engineers in this film. We requested that formally from the Department of Energy, the EPA, his chief advisor, Valerie Jarrett, the vice president, the president. We got answers from two of them. Those two answers from the president and from the Department of Energy were no. No. So it's time to move it into another category. Take it into the streets and keep it pushing along. I'm sorry. It's a long-winded answer, but the bottom line is the film doesn't need to be updated. It's just gotten worse.